Welcome, bienvenidos. Vamos a comenzar. We begin the second day of this 7th edition of the European Summer Courses organized by the Diario de Navarra Foundation and Equipo Europa, which this year are being held under the title A Competitive and Social Europe. This is the 7th edition of the European Summer Courses, which represents its consolidation, which is focused more than ever on Europe. As we mentioned yesterday at the opening, the European Summer Courses have become an excellent space for reflection and exchange of ideas among different political actors, civil society, young people, the private sector, the media, and the state and European institutions to jointly address the challenges facing the European Union. Yesterday, on the opening day, we focused on the Danish presidency and relationships with the South. We also focused on the 4th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Accession of Spain to the European Community. Today, we'll focus on social innovation in the European Union with key speakers from Latvia and the United Kingdom. We'll also focus on a key issue, the challenges of security in Europe. Decía que comenzamos hoy la segunda jornada de esta 7ª edición de los cursos europeos de verano, que como bien sabéis ya, organiza Fundación Diario de Navarra y Equipo Europa, y que seguimos en torno a nuestro foco central, una Europa competitiva y social, que es el lema de este año. 7ª edición de los cursos que suponen su consolidación. Y seguimos mirando a Europa. En la apertura ya dijimos que los cursos europeos se han convertido en un excelente espacio de reflexión e intercambio, y eso lo hacen posible fundamentalmente dos pilares. Nuestros ponentes tenemos la suerte de contar con primeros espadas en distintos ámbitos de distintos países de Europa, y vosotros, vosotras, ustedes, nuestro público, que es lo que nos anima a seguir trabajando año tras año y a ofrecer esta columna vertebral que nos conecta desde Navarra como un puente hasta Europa. Hoy vamos a poner el foco en la innovación social en la Unión Europea, y para ello tenemos protagonistas destacados de Letonia y del Reino Unido, y nos vamos a centrar también, como bien sabéis, en una cuestión prioritaria, importantísima en este momento, los retos de la seguridad en Europa. Antes de iniciar esta segunda sesión, quiero agradecer, ya lo hice ayer, pero no voy a dejar de hacerlo ningún día, a quienes hacen posible estos cursos. Sin ellos no estaríamos aquí. Gracias al apoyo de la Comisión Europea en España, con una gran implicación en la organización de los cursos y la colaboración del Parlamento Europeo. Además, los cursos europeos de verano cuentan con el respaldo del programa Hablemos de Europa, de la Secretaría de Estado para la Unión Europea, del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores, y con el apoyo también fundamental de la Fundación Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Además de entidades locales imprescindibles para nosotros, como Caja Rural de Navarra, Ayuntamiento de Pamplona, Cámara Navarra de Comercio, Confederación Empresarial de Navarra y Deloitte. Gracias a todos. Sin más, en primer lugar voy a presentaros a alguien muy especial, porque vamos a hablar, en primer lugar, en este primer momento de la segunda jornada, de una compleja y retadora tarea: facilitar la innovación social en el marco europeo. Y para ello os voy a presentar a alguien que no solamente sabe mucho de ello, sino que es un referente a nivel mundial. Yo creo que no hay muchas dudas si hablamos de que en Europa el país que mejor hace las cosas, si hablamos de eficacia, de eficiencia en la gestión, es Dinamarca. Y tenemos aquí a Christian Bason, cofundador de Transition Collective. Está considerado, como digo, uno de los referentes mundiales en innovación en el sector público. Bueno, pues tenemos la suerte de que Dinamarca es nuestro país invitado, que está aquí él, que vamos a poder escucharle, extraigamos claves, porque seguro que algo podemos hacer mejor aquí en Navarra, en España y en nuestros territorios. Su experiencia incluye más de 25 años en consultoría y dirección del Centro de Diseño danés. Y como digo, recordemos que Dinamarca es un modelo de gestión social, estatal, eficiente y con altísima aprobación ciudadana, que también es muy importante a la hora de hablar de la cohesión social. Ha escrito tres libros clave sobre transformación organizacional y liderazgo público. Hoy viene a hablarnos de lo que sabe y a compartir sus experiencias. Vamos a tomar nota todos. Nos va a hablar de cómo facilitar la innovación social, cómo diseñar misiones para generar impacto, y le tenemos aquí con nosotros. Christian Bason, he will talk about the complex and challenging task of facilitating social innovation within the European framework. His experience includes more than 25 years in consulting and management of the Danish Design Center. Christian Bason, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
much. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. Let's have the slides up, please. Wonderful to be here, just for a short time, but this morning I had the chance to take a run in the beautiful city of Pamplona, and I'm definitely going to come back. In Denmark, 1 out of 6 young people, when they turn 18, have a diagnosis in the psychiatric system. Autism spectrum, ADHD, anxiety. There's been between 50% and 100% growth in diagnosis of different kinds in the last 10 years. And we don't understand why, and we don't know how to change it. So a couple of years ago, in the Danish Design Center, we asked ourselves, how could we as a society address this question of mental challenges for young people? And to address it, we started with the future. We started by exploring in 2050, how could we transform society so that young people were thriving again? And we involved young people in all kinds of workshops. We involved local government officials. We involved experts, psychiatrists. We even called up the representative of Facebook in Denmark to join the workshops to explore the role of social media in impacting young people's lives. And we said we want to pursue a mission, a long-term mission to transform the society to a place where young people are thriving, and we formulated that mission together with everyone we involved. And we even designed a set of principles for what would that society look like. What are the core principles and value, such as involvement, inclusion and community, relations and care, preventing mental illness and treating it early and in the different contexts people live, bringing in nature into our society in more ways, because we know that nature is a part of creating thriving lives. We even reimagined how might work and education be in a world where you don't have the same competitive and pressure on people as we have today. We said, how can we even imagine a city that does not exist yet, but a city where young people are thriving? We gave the city an imaginary name, and we made a city map, and we built ideas about which institutions would be in a city, in a local government where young people were thriving. Places where they could learn, places where they worked, places where they were in nature, and so on. We even created films from the future, videos with actors playing out roles of young people's everyday lives at work and learning, in nature, in family, and so on. And all of this was made in the public domain as a resource that everyone else, schools, local governments, could use and start their own conversations about what it takes to create mental thriving. We launched the whole thing in a big event here in the heart of Copenhagen as a welcome to Vorby, the imaginary city. It means our town. It doesn't exist, but it's something we made up as a way to project our ideas into the future and dream of a better world for young people. And as an impact of that work, local governments started to invest in new ways of working with thriving youth. There was a school transformation funded by a Danish organization near Copenhagen working on mental thriving. One of the regions in Denmark, the big South Denmark region, did a whole day of sessions on how they might approach thriving for young people. So in a way, scaling and spreading these social innovation ideas coming out of this project. So this is just an example of how we might work with long-term ambitious change for our society, and how we might start designing by involving and co-designing with the people who are affected, and with the expertise, and with the political system as well that is needed. So that's the question I want to discuss with you the next half hour or so. I'm sure some of you have seen this before. It's a very, very advanced technological innovation, which is SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, that has now the ability to capture a rocket coming down from space so it can be reused. It's very impressive. It's a huge engineering accomplishment. But it's also pretty easy to see when it's solved, right? Does it work or does it not work? Does the rocket explode or does it land nicely? When it comes to social issues, to social innovation, we rarely find that we can say, now we have success, now we succeed. In fact, when you look at problems like ghettos, like migration, like integration, like mental health, all the kinds of societal challenges we face, there is no such thing as an easy technological fix. When we did the project about mental health, some said, well, why don't you just create an app for mental health, and then you fix it. Of course, an app, even more screen time, is not going to fix how young people thrive. So a few books have described this. For example, the book The Moon and the Ghetto, where Richard Nelson back in the 1970s said, if America can bring a person to the moon and back successfully, why can't we solve the ghetto problems we have? Or my good friend Bill Eggers actually from Deloitte, who's our sponsor today, wrote many books. One is called If We Can Put a Man on the Moon, Why Can't We Fix Big Things in Government? And Mariana Mazzucato here has written a book on moonshot economy, or on how can we be inspired by the moon landing to turn that into innovation for the public sector and for the social space. Last year I was part of a project where we surveyed Danish actors around what are the biggest challenges in the social space they see and in the societal space they see. And these are some of the challenges in my country: climate crisis, well-being crisis, social inequality, also in healthcare, aging society, and challenges broader in our healthcare and welfare system that they highlighted as the most pressing and most urgent challenges. About 200 organizations answering this survey. And what is social innovation then? Well, as Jeff Mulgan from the UK says, it's an approach and a lively field that has grown and includes everything from microcredit to makerspaces and social investments and participatory democracy, and even finding evidence for what works in education. At Stanford Social Innovation Review, they define social innovation as a novel solution to a social problem that is both more effective, efficient, sustainable, and so on. They also highlight that social innovation is not about just creating value for individuals or, for example, for individual companies, but it's about focusing on value for society as a whole. And even the European Union has, for the last, I would say, 20 years, focused on social innovation. I remember sitting at a round table with Manuel Barroso a long time ago discussing social innovation in the European Union. Maybe that was around 2008 or 9. Today, there's a lot of policy, a lot of investments, a lot of funding going into social innovation. Just to say one example is how the European Commission currently defines social innovation, but there's a big funding discussion going on, and I think we'll see literally $1 billion or more euros going into social change and transformation with the next budget. We'll discuss that later probably. So what can social innovation look like? Just give you a quick another example. This is a patient to the left, and actually it's a young doctor student to the right. And there's an organization in Denmark called Social Health, which works to address inequality in health, which means that people coming from a low socioeconomic background, from a poor background, low education, often are not treated the same way in our health system in Denmark as people who are better off, wealthier, better education. People with disadvantaged background cannot navigate the language and the complexities of being a patient in a healthcare system. So as a solution, this organization matches young doctors and young nursing students with patients to be their helpers, to be their buddies, to help them navigate. And so immediately, as a patient, you have somebody on your side who's a professional, studying to be a professional, and who can help you understand the language, understand best treatments, and so on, and give you more power in facing the doctors and the professionals. But that's not the only innovation in this program. Because what happens when young doctor students and young nursing students have the experience of being in the shoes of disadvantaged citizens? They take that experience with them, and the empathy with that experience with them, as they become their own professionals, and they become adult doctors, nurses in the system. So actually this innovation doesn't just help on the problem, it also creates systems change in transforming and educating the next generation of doctors and nurses. It's a pretty good example of social innovation. It's also still pretty small scale. It's running by some local governments in Denmark, funded by also philanthropy. And I would say that it's an example of something good, but we're not getting enough of this. And we're certainly not getting enough social innovation at a European scale either. Because the challenges we face are getting more and more complex. You can't really read this diagram, but if you did, you'll probably almost lose your breath in looking at all the risks that the World Economic Forum are lining up on intersection between climate change and geopolitical turbulence and social challenges and budgetary challenges and all of the things that are disrupting our society. And they're all interlinked in different ways. It's hyper complex, the context in which we need to navigate and create social change. And that means that at a local level or national level, we are seeing more and more difficulty in getting the outcomes we want. This is a quote I heard just the other day from a director general from a Danish agency, so the top manager, saying that on almost every parameter, the area that I lead is going in the wrong direction. And this is in Denmark, a country that does have quite a few resources and has a quite efficient government, and still we are struggling. Still it is quite difficult, and we don't know how to move forward. So when the boundaries of problems, they change, when they're shifting and morphing and becoming more complex, the way we innovate must change as well. One way to see it is that the problems we face today are not only systemic, so many different actors, many different moving parts at local, regional, national, international level. They're also complex, which means that if you fix something over here, it might have unintended consequences over here. And they're also wicked, which means that they are both systemic, complex, and political, meaning that we can sometimes have political and ideological debates about if there even is a problem. In my own country, some say that immigration is great and important for a diverse society and for labor force. Other people in my country are saying immigration is something we should stop because we want to maintain our way of life, for example. So there's discussions on even defining the problem, right? That means it's a wicked problem. So how do you work with wicked problems? Well, one way of working is to say we're not going to solve it like fixing the rocket launch, but we are going to move forward in ways where we learn and we experiment and we become smarter together and we try things out. So the way is like we move towards the future in a way where we're learning all the time. And we're not just learning in our silos, in business or in government or in the civic society, we're actually learning together. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book. I've written a lot of books, as you heard before. One of them I have it with. I have a copy here as well. I just borrowed. Was really about how to innovate, how we innovate for a more sustainable future. So it's like a radical perspective on social innovation, you might say. And let me just offer some thoughts about what that might mean. So how can governments, the public sector especially, but also other actors, take social innovation to the next level? And here I would say that we need to design missions for impact, just like we did with the mental health challenge among young people in Denmark. What does designing missions mean? It means to reimagine social innovation in ways where we don't just build small projects from the present, where we don't just create funding where everybody competes to win a contract for funds, which is the way most funding in the EU and also in philanthropy is given. It's where we do not either go bottom up with many grassroots initiatives or from the top with high-level policy. It is where we don't just think that governance, meaning how we meet, how we decide, how we learn, how we measure, how we evaluate, is an expense. And where we don't think that innovation is something we manage in projects. Rather, we need to move to a place where we develop from the future, just like we did with Young People's Thriving, where we build portfolios for change, where we collaborate for funding, to get everybody involved, not just those who win the contract, and where we can work both top-down and bottom-up, where we see governance as an investment, and where we manage in new ways across sectors, across the silos. Around the world, this is happening, In Denmark, one organization is doing mission labs for green transition, and so is the Danish national government, investing literally hundreds of millions of euros in transforming Denmark towards a carbon neutral society. In the UNDP and with partners in Africa, there are innovation programs going on there. Britain has 5 big missions for its new government that they're trying to implement. I'll talk a little bit about a program that we ran for the European Union on green transition, and a small town, Holstebro in Denmark, is using missions to transform education and business development at the same time. Denmark even has a mission ministry as well. We created a whole ministry in Denmark just to run one mission, which is to transform the Danish agricultural landscape to be rewilded into wild nature again, 10% of the landscape. So like one big mission long term and just one ministry to run it. So that's why I wrote an article about that some time ago. So you saw the book already, but this is really about an approach that works strategically and long term. In a way, it's like taking social innovation to the next level and offering us tools and approaches and practices we can deploy. I said before, top-down, bottom-up, in mission work, addressing big, complex challenges, wicked problems, maybe even so big that you can address them like the global goals in the UN. It's about building programs that connect big challenges with local experimentation across disciplines, across sectors, getting many different types of actors together. In this kind of portfolio approach. This is an approach that the European Union has taken very, very seriously and has invested quite a lot of its budgets in, for example, research into mission-led initiatives. Another way to see missions is to say, instead of innovating to find the best bet, finding the best idea, thinking we can solve and fix things with one great idea, actually we need many more ideas. We need to do more with more. We need to mobilize more, get more involved. Again, this is what we did with our Mental Thriving program at the Danish Design Center, where we said we need everybody involved in addressing this big challenge, and we probably need to try a lot of things to see what will stick, what will work. So here are some elements if you are going to start building missions for social innovation. I'll go through the elements quite quickly. It's almost like a super short primer or masterclass in missions we'll do, but very quickly. But to say what is the way in which we go through this work of setting direction, mobilization, creating a portfolio, and then building the kind of governance needed to actually succeed. So hold on. Number 1, setting direction and mobilization. What future do we want? Where do we want to go as a society, as a region, as a city perhaps? Or maybe as Europe? Where do we actually want to go long term? How do we mobilize hope, imagination, dreams about how things can be better? Maybe one of the biggest crises we have today is a lack of collective imagination. Studies show that, especially young people, don't think that their lives are going to be better than their parents'. That's the first time in modern history that the next generation does not see that they will have progress. So we need to refine the hope and the imagination that things can actually get better. Mariana Mazzucato, who's a professor in London, a big proponent of mission, says that getting directionality, setting direction, is about creating public value that is collectively created by different actors. So to move forward, it's not about somebody going first, it's about mobilizing a coalition of at least the willing and able, and maybe even also those that are willing but not able, and then helping those that are not able to go. An example is a big program called the New European Bauhaus. In Denmark, we joined that program that was launched by Ursula von der Leyen a few years ago. We created a coalition of about 25 different actors in Denmark. We first mobilized 150, then we found the 25 that wanted to join. We built a big program across Europe called Desire, designing the irresistible circular society as a way to think about a society that is reusing materials in a circular economy and where we don't waste anything, especially when we build and construct cities, buildings, built environment. Here are some of the actors we involved in this big consortium across Europe. Everybody from architects to artists to industrialists to city planners. And so here's how that program, you can look at it online, is becoming a whole wealth of initiatives about training and learning and actions and building projects and transformation work across different building sites in Europe, and also an infrastructure in a way to reimagine a better society. Number two, creating portfolios. As I said before, we need to do more with more, which means we need to do not just single projects, but we need to just mobilize everything we can do to drive change. This is what a portfolio might look like, where we move over time and where each dot is an initiative, it's a project, it's an experiment, it's a piece of research, it's a piece of knowledge, it's a campaign, but we need more to happen over time. And the question, of course, is how do we then steer that process? We can steer that, for example, through the 3 horizons. 3 Horizons is a great framework you can take home and use in your own work. Basically, it says that to go from a world in crisis to a sustainable world, to the good future we want, to the preferred future that we dream of, there are things we need to stop doing. That's the first horizon. We need to stop doing business as usual, which is sometimes the hardest to do. When have you last seen a government agency or university or anything else stop doing stuff? We just do more and more, even if it's not working. Then we also need to have the emerging future. That's number 3. That's to scale up what works. Scale up those practices, those small pieces that are actually working, and give them energy and light and growth. And then we need to experiment. That's the disruptive innovation. We need to experiment with new types of innovations. So to move towards a better future, we can work with these different 3 horizons. And I see more and more organizations doing that as a way to structure a process of change. Finally, how can we then build the infrastructure that we need for social innovation? Well, we need to start rethinking how we work together, how we decide things together, how we fund together, how we learn together. We need to rethink all of that to be on par with the nature of the challenges we face. An example that we did in Denmark was this is in Danish, but we basically built a governance model around a very big program to transform business to be more sustainable and competitive at the same time over 8 years, from today to 2000 and now to 2030. And in this governance model, we said who decides, who informs, who needs to learn, who can make things happen, who manages. And we created a governance model at multiple levels. And then the secretariat in the middle, the mission management, to say somebody needs to wake up every morning and say, we are working to transform Danish companies to be sustainable. And that is what we do, nothing else. This is our task. And we are working with everyone, academia, researchers, businesses, and this is like 4,000 companies that are getting involved in this work, right? Big, big work, long term, and we need to ask all those questions the right way. We need to build this kind of mission managers, which is really in a way of thinking about new types of institutions, new types of roles that we need. Maybe some of you will have that job title sometime in the future. And what does a mission manager do? Well, a mission manager works on setting this direction, works on getting stakeholders involved, works on building this decision-making process around starting stuff, but also stopping things that are not working, working on impact, and then communicating as we learn, as we find out what works, signs of success, and so on. So if you are to start getting involved in your own mission, if you are a national government, regional government, city, or even a company, then these are some of the questions you can ask. Are we going to try to lead a mission? Are we going to co-lead? Are we going to contribute or be part of it? What is the long-term value creation we want to take part in? How are we contributing to the bigger picture? Can we seek out existing but also new types of partners that we don't normally work with? Who should be part of this movement towards the future? Where do we contribute? What kind of portfolio? How do we find funding? And how do we work with funders to see that need to invest long term and take risk together with us? And then you build the governance model. I think it's about time that we reimagine our public institutions to be focused on impact, on missions, not on a silo or a small domain, that are fit for the future to work across sectors and to both involve citizens, partners, but also to work with long-term strategy. Because when it comes down to it, and this is, by the way, one of my favorite quotes of all time by the anthropologist Margaret Mead, it's almost always groups of thoughtful, committed citizens that when they set their mind to it, change the world. And that is what we need. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. Really inspiring. Tenemos unos minutos para preguntas, 5 o 7 minutos, así que brazos arriba. Os pediré, como siempre, que seáis muy breves, en inglés, a ser posible, que os presentéis. ¿Tenemos una pregunta? ¿Alguna más? 2. Venga, pues vamos a comenzar por allí. Tenemos el micrófono cerca. Primera, ella, Elena, aquí abajo, en la tercera fila. So let's go. Thank you so much. Go on.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your speech because it was really inspiring. And well, I wanted to ask you because given the context I got from your speech, even though we aim to reach a future, well, main issues like mental illnesses, immigration, climate change, and other structural crises are addressed through a model based in social innovation. I'd like to know to what extent do you think this model could be exported from Denmark, not only to the rest of the continent, but maybe more worldwide? And also, I also like to know how do you think social or maybe the civil society should be also involved in reaching this change? Yeah. Thank you very much.
It's a great question, and I mean, when new ideas about how to do things start, they pop up somewhere and then they begin to spread. And just like the notion of social innovation started, well, actually quite a long time ago, but has been revitalized the last 20 maybe years, the notion of missions or mission-driven innovation has been growing quite rapidly for the last 10 years. In the United Kingdom, definitely in Denmark, in the European Union, in some countries across the EU, in the United Nations Development Program, where I had the pleasure of working with the UNDP on assessing how they work with portfolios in 70 countries around the world. So it is happening. It is happening that organizations are seeing that they have to shift away from working from the present to the future in projects. Because the project was the big invention of the 20th century of how to solve problems. But projects are not working anymore on the problems we face, on the wicked problems. So it is happening. And I would say that if you look really closely, you might also find people in Spain and in Southern Europe that are aware of this methodology and this approach. But there's one thing to be a professor or to be theoretically aware. There's a whole other thing to do it, right? And that's why we need to start practicing how we actually work across many different domains to create this kind of movement in missions. And that's where we also need civic society. In my own country, in Denmark, in civic society, we both see more and more non-governmental organizations and citizen-led organizations take part in missions because we structure impacts that way. We also see the government, but also civic society actors that are funders, so philanthropies. Some of them are very large. If you've heard about, for example, Novo Nordisk, it's a Danish pharmaceutical company. They're owned by a foundation, and the foundation behind Novo Nordisk is now investing, amongst other things, in missions. Adenauer Stiftung and others in around Europe could be other examples of foundations that are potentially able to bring them money into missions instead of just giving competitive grants in projects. So it's happening, I would say.
Thank you so much. Another question? ¿Hay alguna otra más después de esta? Pues vamos con esta cuestión y continuaremos.
Okay, thank you so much in advance for sharing with us the perspective, how the situation is worse in your countries. It's these places that are really good for sharing different perspectives or how different countries work. But from your presentation, I've seen like similarities, focusing on the healthcare system. That I think I have having this vision that we are still focusing not in the preventive area of the health system, but in the treatment. Like with this big impact, this big force of the big pharma. Focusing, putting efforts on the treatment, how to treat. You have anxiety, take this medication. And of course, the doctors are important for these treatments, but aren't we abandoning, forgetting about these other specialists of the health, like psychologists, like physiotherapists, nutritionists, all these sectors of the health
Yes.
that they don't have a direct impact. They cannot provide measurable things, but at a lack of information. And that's a good measure, because if you don't see the problem, it's because it's working. But if it's working, you cannot confirm how it works. You cannot measure, but also has a big impact, a financial impact in this economic sector. So I don't think that this has an objective response. It's more based on ideology. Like if you are not investing or focusing more on the profitable level of the health, and ignoring the social impact of the health. And also, what you have also talked about that the young people are things that they are living worse than the previous generations. I don't know if Denmark, in Spain, we have the information about that confirms. Right now, from the Youth Council of the Valencian Community, we have seen that the employment has reached the levels previous of the 2008 crisis. But that's not helping to prevent the situation, the economic situation, because we have young people working. But
yes. So let me
being
answer.
poor.
Thank
Let
you
me
so
try
much.
to answer your
Two
questions.
questions.
If there were maybe two in there, you have a very good point on health. That is where we are focusing on treatment and not prevention. In Denmark, I work also as a strategy advisor in my everyday job, and we are working with a Danish region that runs healthcare, runs hospitals. And we're helping them create a mission to bring patients home. What does that mean? It means in a world where we don't need hospitals, because we are preventing disease and we are treating people at home, using new technology, but also community and local networks to support people who are ill. So that is one example of a very radical and very ambitious potential mission. We are working on it right this moment with the healthcare professionals and the top leadership of the region on transforming how they think about that question. I think also on your point on not addressing the real challenges in the economy, that yes, you can maybe get employment back to a high level. I know Spain is doing quite well economically. But what about this underlying structural and systemic issues? I've worked very much with labor market policy in my time, and I know that Spain, for example, has a system where it can be quite difficult for young people to find not just jobs, but also to remain in stable jobs in the labor market. So I would say in social innovation, it is about addressing the next level, which is the systemic causes of, for example, youth unemployment.
Thank you so much, Christian Bason. Please, un aplauso. Don't go.